All right, let's jump right in. This time, we're going to break down a really interesting list of 10 so-called low-risk football betting predictions for a huge weekend of games on March 6th and 7th, 2026. We're going to look at the picks, the strategy behind them, and what you should really take away from this whole approach. But before we even get into the matches, let's start with the big question this entire game plan is built on. What in the world makes a bet low risk anyway? It's a term that gets thrown around all the time, right? And understanding the strategy is absolutely key. So here's our game plan. First, we'll decode what low risk actually means. Then we'll walk through the specific predictions for Friday's games and then Saturday's. After that, we'll get into the strategy behind it all, and we'll wrap up with the most important takeaway. Okay, let's kick off with section 1, decoding the low risk bet. This is the foundation for every single pick we're about to look at, so getting this concept down is, well, pretty crucial. So here's the deal. This is not about finding that 1 in a million long shot that's going to make you rich overnight. Nope, it's the total opposite. The whole strategy is to find things that are very, very likely to happen. You can think of it as aiming for a bunch of small, consistent wins instead of one giant lottery ticket. The returns on each one are smaller, sure, but your chances of success are way, way higher. So, with that idea in mind, let's see how it actually plays out. Here comes the first set of predictions for Friday, March 6th. Now, what's really cool here is the mix of bets. You can see the strategy already. You've got predictions for just one team to score at least one goal, like Al Ahly or Real Madrid, and then you have bets on the total goals in a match being over 2.5. And each one has a super simple, straight-to-the-point reason behind it. Let's zoom in on one of these to see how it works. PSG versus Monaco. On one side, you have the absolute giants of the league, PSG. And on the other, you've got Monaco, a team famous for its attacking firepower. You put those two on the same pitch, and you've got a recipe for something special. And boom! There it is. The logic couldn't be simpler or more powerful. When you have two teams that love to attack, going head-to-head, predicting a game with plenty of goals, in this case over 2.5, well, according to the source, that's a high-probability bet. It just makes sense. Okay, so that was Friday. Now, let's move on to the weekend and check out the next 5 predictions for the Saturday showdowns on March 7th. And you can see a similar pattern here, but with a few interesting new scenarios. We've still got bets on total goals, like that Mansfield versus Arsenal Cup game, but look closer. We've also got predictions for an outright winner. That's a different kind of low-risk bet, one that's based on a team just being a clear favorite. Let's pull out the Wrexham versus Chelsea game as an example. I mean, this is your classic David versus Goliath setup, isn't it? You've got the lower league underdog, Wrexham, going up against a Premier League powerhouse like Chelsea. The gap in quality, money, and depth is just enormous. And the logic from the source is just blunt. Blue's too strong for this. See, in this case, the low-risk bet isn't about how many goals there will be. It's about the overwhelming, undeniable probability that the much stronger team is simply going to win the match. So we've seen the what, all 10 of the individual picks. Now it's time to dig into the why. Let's pull back the curtain and really look at the master strategy that ties all of these selections together. Now, the source mentions these picks are good for an ACCA, which is just short for accumulator. So what is that? Well, an accumulator is when you chain a bunch of separate bets together into one big one. The odds multiply, which means the potential payout gets bigger. But, and this is a big but, every single one of those bets has to win. If even one of them fails, the whole thing is a bust. So when you boil it all down, you can see how these picks are designed to work together in something like an accumulator. The entire strategy relies on just 3 types of high-probability bets. 1, betting on the total number of goals. 2, betting that a strong team will score at least once. And 3, picking the obvious favorite to just win the game. That's the whole playbook. All right, let's bring it all home. We're at the final whistle. So, what's the big takeaway from this whole 10-pick game plan? What should you really walk away with? And here it is, the whole game plan laid out in one place. You can really see the philosophy here. It's a blend of different strategies. Powerhouse teams that are expected to score, high-energy games that are likely to have a lot of goals, and clear favorites that are predicted to just get the job done. It's really a portfolio of high-probability events. But honestly, after all of that analysis, this right here might be the single most important slide. The source itself gives this critical piece of advice. Always, always check the latest team news and odds right before you make a decision. Things change fast in football. A last-minute injury, a sudden change to the lineup, and that stuff can affect everything. And that really leads us to our final thought here. The data, the odds, they tell you part of the story. But this advice points to something deeper, doesn't it? So the question I want to leave you with is this. Beyond the numbers on the screen, what's the one intangible thing? Team morale, the weather, recent form. What's that one factor you should always consider before making that final call?